everybody. I hope you had a great weekend. Yeah. My name is Georgia, and I am program manager for the Free Software Foundation, and I sort of oversee all of the doings of Libre Planet, along with all of my amazing colleagues and a ton of wonderful volunteers. And I'm going to have a ton of people to thank later. But first, I want to introduce someone officially who you just saw. That was a little backwards, but I'm really glad to introduce this person who is giving our closing keynote, and very grateful to him for stepping in at the last second when Biella Coleman unfortunately had to cancel. We're hoping to have her another year. For many of you, Benjamin Mako-Hill is a familiar figure. He's a social scientist, technologist, and activist, and he spent time studying here at MIT. He's also on the Free Software Foundation board, and he's an associate member, like I think many of you are, and I hope more of you will be considering becoming one after this event. And I think that's enough introduction. Mako.
All right. Yeah, I've been joking a little bit this week and saying that, like, no one is more disappointed that Biella Coleman's not here than I am. I just want to, like, maybe really quickly, just like, I also want to thank the organizers and everyone for putting on such a really fantastic conference, George, and everyone else. And all the amazing speakers for the really fantastic talks that we've seen, and all the attendees for being here. Thank you all for another. I've been to every Libre Planet except last year, which I had to miss. And this is, I think, every year it just gets better, and this year is absolutely no exception. So thanks everyone for putting on such an awesome conference. So I'd actually initially thought about, I had an idea for this talk, which kind of came together. I've been thinking about it a lot over the last year, and it sort of came together a month or so ago. And so I sent an email to the organizers saying, I know I've totally missed the deadline, but if anyone cancels, I could do something. I was thinking maybe like in a small room where nobody was going to be there. And I think that although closing keynotes often try to like end on a high note, and I am going to try to do that, this talk is really about the thing that has me most worried about the future of free software. And I also want to say that these are new ideas. You're actually the first people outside of my research group who have really got to hear these things. And I do expect that, like most of the other keynotes, I'm going to be using up most of my time here in order to try to get through these things. But I really do look forward to carrying forward this conversation, in the hallways outside and online on Mastodon or whatever your sort of GNU social system is moving forward. So what I'm going to try to do here is sort of quickly introduce a story from my own research. As you mentioned, I'm a professor of communication at the University of Washington, and I'm going to talk about a piece of research, briefly, a little finding in a piece of research that I've really been thinking a lot about. I'm then going to try to expand, and it comes from some research I did about couchsurfing and Airbnb. So pretty different, but maybe than free software, but I think that I'll try to explain how I think they're related. I'm then going to sort of try to explain that result by walking through a history of sort of digital commons and online collaboration in sort of three parts. In part one, we built a social movement. In part two, this social movement invented some new and really powerful forms of mass collaboration. And then in part three, we became sort of older and more mature, in good ways and in some maybe less good ways. And meanwhile, the proprietary world, those people that our movement was supposed to be fighting, learned actually a lot from us. I'm going to sort of try to end thinking a little bit about what that means for the future. But first, let's talk a little bit about couchsurfing. So couchsurfing is a website that connects people who need a place to stay with total strangers on the internet who they've not met, but who may have a spare guest room or a couch. Couchsurfing was created in 2003 as a nonprofit organization, and it recently has claimed to have somewhere in the range of 400,000 to 500,000 active hosts. That is to say, people who are willing to invite total strangers from the internet into their homes. I'm just out of curiosity, does anyone like last night stay in the house of a person they met on Couchsurfing? Is there anyone in this room who stayed on Couchsurfing last night? No. Has anyone ever done it? Like, not tonight? OK, a bunch of people. I have. There's this other website called Airbnb. Airbnb is also a website that connects people with extra space in their house on a couch or in a guest room with total strangers on the internet who might be able to take up some of that space. Airbnb was created substantially after Couchsurfing, and Couchsurfing was not even the first website that did this. But Airbnb was created in 2008, about 5 years afterwards, and the numbers that I found, which are actually almost 2 years old, suggest that it had somewhere above the range of 2 million people who are hosting their couches and guest rooms or whole apartments on Airbnb. How many people stayed in an Airbnb last night? Whoa, a lot. How many people have ever stayed in an Airbnb? Like, it seems like most of the room. OK. All right. Now, although Couchsurfing and Airbnb have very similar kind of like high-level goals, they're both like in the same business of connecting strangers with extra room to strangers who need some space to put themselves for an evening. They are critically different in one fundamental aspect, which is probably clear to everyone here, which is that Couchsurfing explicitly bans the exchange of money. You're not allowed to pay for it. But on Airbnb, you're allowed to pay for it. In fact, you're not allowed to like not pay for it. Airbnb is a market. Couchsurfing is a cooperative community. It's a commons for hospitality, right? On Couchsurfing, people can give and take hospitality freely, but you can't sell it. And on Airbnb, it's a market. It's people selling hospitality in the same way that you might sell something on eBay. I mean, it's different in the sense that it's hospitality. It's not run exactly like a hotel, but they're kind of in the same sort of business. Now, I want to go back to reflecting a little bit on how similar these things are. And actually, I think it's worth reflecting just how shocking the success of both of these platforms are. People, academics often refer to like the thing that they're both doing as network hospitality. And I think that the success of like network hospitality more broadly is actually like really shocking. Can you imagine if I told like you all, or maybe like almost anyone else 20 years ago, that like literally millions of people would be sleeping in the homes of total strangers that they had never met, like, and except that they just interact with them on the internet? Like, or that even like a significant portion, I don't know, it looks like maybe almost a quarter of this conference would be staying in the homes of random strangers that they found on the internet? It seems to me it couldn't have happened 20 years ago, and it would have been unbelievable if you'd suggested that it could. And the reason that it's happening now is because there have been a series of real innovations, some of them social innovations, some of them technical innovations, that were created by Couchsurfing and by Hospitality Club, which came before it, and a series of other projects, and which have been adopted by Airbnb and others. So here's my Couchsurfing profile. I actually am on both, and this is my Couchsurfing profile. And we can walk through some of the innovations that allow people to trust random strangers, like even random strangers like me, enough that they're willing to invite me into their home or stay in my home. You can see that I've uploaded a picture. In fact, I've uploaded lots of pictures. There's like 7 or 8 of them up there. I have a long description of all of my interests. There's this page that describes a bunch of verification, including that they've verified my address and so on and so forth. But the real kicker, the real reason this works, is not because I put lots of pictures up there. It's because there are tons and tons of references. I have 28 references, all of them positive, not bragging, just saying, from people who have stayed in my house or have hosted me in their homes and have written sometimes pretty long descriptions saying things like, spending time at this place was such a blast, Mako are so great, amazing people. Again, not bragging, that was their words. And if you don't believe them, you can click through on their profiles and you can see all the references that people have left them and so on and so forth, right? There's this system of generalized trust that can be built through this system of references. And it may seem obvious now, but this that reference system and these pieces that have been put up there are the technological and social infrastructure that makes staying with random strangers that you just met on the internet, or in fact